the feminism of freedom definitively won over the feminism of care at the point where a new technology came into the picture, which allowed us medically to flatten those irreducible differences between the sexes, or so it seemed, to the point where really there was no reason not to argue for a feminism of freedom. And that technology was hormonal birth control, which led inexorably towards a ratchet towards the legalization of abortion, which most 19th century feminists would have viewed as not dissimilar, as broadly the same thing as infanticide. And would have recoiled from. It was extremely unusual for a feminist to support abortion in the 19th century. But by the middle of the 20th century, the popularization of hormonal birth control had paradoxically increased the number of unplanned pregnancies simply because there was more sex happening. That it became a matter of social justice, and women began increasingly to see it as a matter of social justice. That young women were no longer compelled to run off to another country or, take their life in their hands with a backstreet abortion or various other horrors that proliferated downstream of this radical transformation in sexual mores. And the upshot of that was, again, on both sides of the Atlantic, within, I believe, a decade of one another, the legalization of abortion across both sides of the Atlantic. Now, I mean, I'm deeply ambivalent on the question of abortion, and I have friends who are pro, and I have friends who are pro-life, and I have friends who are pro-choice. And really, the stance I've taken on that question in the book is to say, well, wherever you sit on the absolute moral question, it's difficult to dispute that if what you're arguing for is a right to assert, is for women to have the right to assert their bodily autonomy, even at the expense of another potential human life, then that's about as definitive a stance as you could possibly take in favor of the feminism of freedom over the feminism of care, which would make a greater amount of space for the needs of the most dependent imaginable other that you could possibly think of. And so wherever you stand on the absolute moral question, the moment where abortion is legalized, and that then within the 20th century women's movement becomes inexorably hitched to the question of women's political personage as such. To the point where, I mean, particularly in America, the debate is now so toxic, I'm cautious to say anything more on it. But it's arrived at the point now where there are people who genuinely, wholeheartedly believe that for that right to be taken away would mean women are no longer able to access personhood as such. And really what you're saying at this point, and what the statement that you're implicitly making there is to say that freedom is so much more important than anything else that it's worth sacrificing a potential human life for if it comes down to what feels like a zero-sum contest. That even more about the most defenseless human life there is, which is to say one which is still in utero and can't survive outside a woman's body. Even that life is forfeit if the price of sustaining that life is the curtailment of a woman's freedom. Now, and again, wherever you stand on the absolute moral question, that's a very strong stance in favor of freedom. And really, I see that as a real caesura moment, a profound inflection point in the women's movement, which it embraced as the baseline of women's political personhood as such, a technologization of women's bodies in the name of individual freedom. And really, I see that the 10-year arrival from the legalization of the pill, approximately 10 years, to the legalization of abortion as our entry into the transhumanist era, because that's the point where women's existence as such comes to seem inextricable from a set of medical technologies. And remember, what's fundamental, what's so radical about these technological innovations is that unlike more or less every other medical practice up to that point, certainly every licit medical practice up to that point, these don't set out to fix what's broken. I mean, if I have a broken arm, I go to the doctor and I say, "Hey, doctor, can you fix my arm, please?" And the doctor has a you go to medical school for years to learn what normal human health looks like, and to learn what to do with people's bodies in order to fix what's broken and make it normal and healthy again. And what's radical and transformative about birth control and later about abortion is that they don't fix what's broken in the name of normal human health. They break what's working normally, which is to say, women's fertility or a normal pregnancy in the name of individual freedom. And I think we still underestimate what a radical transformation that was. And I think we're still working through the downstream consequences of that. And really the second part of the book explores some of the downstream consequences of having entered into the transhumanist moment in the middle of the 20th century. Because I mean, we're more than half a century further into it now. And I think we're beginning to see some of the contours of that new reality more clearly as time has gone on.